For the longest time now, a lot of Star Wars fans have really wanted a lot of change to come to the franchise by Jon and Dave, and that's exactly what they're doing, by the way. They are finding pathways and avenues to really kind of reform the Star Wars franchise, really building it from the ground up, treating it like it's a new thing, to really pay respect to the vision of George Lucas, and it all begins, by the way, with The Mandalorian Season 3 and the Ahsoka series to kick things off in 2023, before 2024, which, by the way, is going to be a very big year for Star Wars TV shows. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to actually see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the kind and great support. Now that, of course, brings us to the main subject. We already know that there has been a lot of back and forth between Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy. They don't really have the best terms right now. They're not on the best terms. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Kathleen Kennedy has prematurely announced so many projects that never came to fruition and never promised things to the fans, and it really has given Disney a bad image. So far, Kathleen Kennedy has announced a total of 6 to 7 movies that were prematurely announced that either got cancelled, that remain on the back burner, that fell into creative differences, or the directors and or writers left. And there's just a lot of things happening with Kathleen Kennedy and her overall agenda-driven mind when it comes to Star Wars. That's exactly why Bob Iger wants to get her out by August. Now, we've already talked about how he has this plan that he's pursuing to get her out earlier by offering tens of millions of dollars more with her severance deal, which got him into a little bit of trouble with the board members. It's not looking likely, by the way. It still remains to be August from what it seems. However, when it comes to the overall revised plan to fire her, with Disney and Lucasfilm preparing to create much change with the Star Wars franchise, Bob Iger, the CEO of everything, Disney, is very busy with his plans to replace Kathleen Kennedy with somebody else as the new president of Lucasfilm. Now, it's noted that currently Bob Iger recently revised his plan for Kathleen Kennedy's firing, and who exactly is going to replace her come August of this year. As of now, Iger is currently looking at David Heyman to take over as the new president of Lucasfilm as his second official choice on the list, if Ron Howard remains to be busy with his work schedule on upcoming films and projects generally speaking. Now, it's said that Howard is still tied up with a handful of unannounced projects that would interfere with him signing a contract to become the new Lucasfilm president by September of 2023. Now, let me just pause here for a second. Now, I know when we talked about Ron Howard coming on board as the new president, a lot of fans had mixed reactions. A lot of fans either love or hate Ron Howard. That's from what it looks like. Not as a filmmaker per se, but as becoming a Lucasfilm president, so to speak. Now, do I think he's a fantastic filmmaker? Absolutely, 100%. You know, he's right up there with a lot of guys like Spielberg and James Cameron. I think Ron Howard movies are great. Solo was, you know, it was entertaining. It was Solo, you know, it was what it was. And it was Star Wars after all. It was a new thing that Ron Howard stepped into. He never did anything like that before on that level. But that really brings us to what's really going on here. So David Heyman is now turning to be the #1 choice by Bob Iger. If you guys don't know David Heyman, he is one of the big-time Hollywood producers who worked on the Harry Potter films, and they want to get him on board because not only is he a big Star Wars fan, but Ron Howard's schedule is looking a little clobbered right now, a little too congested, and a lot of unannounced stuff is on the way. You know, so when you look at David Heyman, I think that he could really pull the job off correctly. I know a lot of fans would love Jon and or Dave Filoni to take over as the new president of Lucasfilm, and we've talked about that before in the past. They actually got the offer, believe it or not, but they turned it down, or they kind of just shifted away from it and are sleeping on it, and that's because they're very busy with all of their upcoming projects. They wouldn't be able to make their projects, for the most part, if they were running things on the financial end, or the financial spectrum of Lucasfilm, right? So that brings us to the next big thing as well, is that as of now, Iger is looking at producer David Heyman, like I stated before, who worked on the Harry Potter films, who is a big Star Wars fan as well, to move up to his #1 choice, since Ron Howard is looking to be less and less likely as the months roll by. Now, this is something that David Heyman is willing to take the job for, and is very excited about the offer, with all, of course, the complications with Ron Howard. Now, it all depends on his availability as well. Kennedy is aware of Bob Iger choosing certain candidates to take over as president, including these two, and is said to not approve of any of them, at no surprise. So, of course, it's not really that big of a surprise. She's not going to approve of anybody that's going to take over her if they don't carry on her agenda, or her vision, and or beliefs when it comes to how Star Wars should be developed and how it should be produced. I mean, you name it. So that brings us to the more complicated scenario. Alright, now we already know that everything related to the Star Wars franchise is all about evolution. And that's what David Heyman likes to do with the Harry Potter films. And he did a fantastic job. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of Harry Potter and all, but I have seen the films, and he does a really good job at evolving characters and the storylines and how that should really be done and portrayed. That's what you need. You need somebody that is connected to the source material and connected to the lore and everything like that. And that's David Heyman as well. He likes the lore of the things that he has worked on. So the next thing up is that, of course, in the meantime, John and Dave currently have Lucasfilm president-like privileges. And that is allowing them to fix the franchise with upcoming installments. So, without a doubt, this really is going to raise the bar for Lucasfilm as a company if they get David Heyman on as the official president, because not only will it propel them in a better path, it's also going to give them a consistent producer and president that cares about the lore and how Star Wars should be produced. So, given that, like I said, John and Dave, they have these big-time privileges that are very Lucasfilm president-esque, that is allowing them to take control of the financial end of things, as well as the creative end of things for the most part. And technically, if you think about it, John and Dave really are running the show right now, because Kathleen Kennedy cannot interfere with any of their upcoming projects on either end, financial or creative. She cannot. She's only involved with Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, and that's the cutoff point. And it kind of makes sense, because a lot of that probably has to do with the whole August 2023 firing. You know, basically Skeleton Crew is getting close to wrapping production by March. Very long shoot. They started doing this in June. Alright, so just put that into perspective there. They were supposed to finish shooting by, like, the end of October into early November. Big time delays and reshoots caused the whole March aim. So, with that being said, guys, I would like to hear what each and every one of you have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.